Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. Stories of service.
Welcome to the Priority Zero podcast. My name's Oresti, and today with us we have David Dotson. David was a 0311 United States infantryman with the United States Marine Corps with multiple deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, Okinawa, Australia and beyond. He's also a current serving police officer. So David, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Really excited. We've known each other for quite a few years now, although we've spent minimal time together because we live so far away. But I'm really interested, man. You've had a wealth of experience, with your multiple deployments and done quite a long time in the Marines. So I'm really keen to get your story out there and share it with people and hopefully inspire some people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much for this too. This is an honor.
I appreciate it, mate. So start off, tell us a little bit about yourself. Well,
I guess the best place to start is just like the beginning. I was born and raised in a small town outside of Wilton, Iowa, which is right there pretty much in the center of the country of America. So it's kind of different. So when we grew up, so we didn't live on the farm that my grandparents had, but we would always go travel to that farm and we would work there. And then my dad had another job. And so I grew up, farming and then just learning different trades growing up because you always had to know how to do everything. So growing up, my dad was a wrestler and he wanted one of his kids to be a wrestler. So I initially just fell in love with it. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do kind of thing. And growing up, it was just the things I cared about most was like sports and cars and, just what typical boys always think of. And I said, you know what, I want to make money and I want to do something. I just don't know what I want to do. I'm kind of looking for some guidance right now. So my brother, Justin, so he was in the Marine Corps. He told me, he goes, maybe you should join the Marine Corps because it'll give you a structure in your life. It'll give you discipline and it'll help you figure out what you really want to do in life. And I said, okay. And then that same day I went and drove to the only one I knew where it was, Greedy Station. I saw this guy's name was Staff Sergeant Fisher. And I said, hey, I want to join the Marine Corps. And he goes, well, it ain't that easy, son. So, we sat down and they have these tests. They have like a pre-test that you have to take.
Is that the ASVAB? Yeah.
Yes, correct. And so I sat down, took this ASVAB test, and just thought I knew everything, and just kind of blew through it. Not, like, come on, I'm going to be a Marine. You want me? I want to be here. Let's do this. I took this ASVAB and he said, this is what I need you to do. I need you to get this book. It's the ASVAB prep course book. Study this book and call me in a week. And I went, what? So I went to the local library and got a library card and I got this book and I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. So I sat down and I studied through this book and and I called Staff Sergeant Fisher back and I said, yeah, I think I'm ready. And he goes, all right, well, let's do this. And so I took this pre-test and then he goes, you know what? You actually surprised me, Dotson. You actually did what you said you were going to do. So I got shipped off to MEPS and that's just I'm sure everybody's heard a lot of weird stories about MEPS. Most of them are probably true.
MEPS is your medical, is that right?
Yeah. So we have MEPS, and then you go and you take that test again, but it's just a bigger version of it. You get a score on that. And I think the first time I took it, I got like a 62. And I was like, barely passed. And they're like, you did all right. And I was like, okay. Then you go through and then you go see a bunch of doctors and you got to go take the longest hearing test of your lifetime. Like I remember people like looking over at the guy next to me like, I don't hear anything, but this guy's sleeping, so I must be doing something right because I'm awake. And they cram you into this room where there's probably, 20, 30 chairs, and you're just staring at the wall in front of you with a little clicker in front of you, and it's just like, I don't know what to do. And
did I hear this? Didn't I hear this?
Yeah. You start hearing, you start thinking you're hearing stuff, and you're just pushing the button, and then it tells you like, only push the button when you hear things, and you're like, okay, well, I'm still here. I sat down with this guy, Master Sergeant Taylor. He said, okay, you passed. What do you want to do? And I said, I want to do the only thing I know how to do. I want to be in the infantry. And he goes, are you sure? And I said, yes, absolutely. He goes, I just want to remind you, we're getting ready to go to war. And I said, yes, that's what I want to do. And he said, okay. He goes through his computer and he does a bunch of stuff. And then he looks at me and he goes, we're going to put you in the drop program. And I said, well, what the hell does that mean? And so basically, at that time, there was just an influx of people wanting to join the armed forces this was a couple of years after 9/11. So everybody wanted to join, the Army, Navy, Marine Corps. Not so much the Coast Guard at that time, but everybody wanted to go serve their country. So surprisingly, they had to you had to get put on a list, and they said your recruiter will call you when you're ready, when the spot opens up for you to go. And I just thought that was the craziest thing about. I couldn't believe it, and I just felt like here's another hurdle. Or there's a big saying in the Marine Corps, hurry up and wait, and that was my first education on what that really meant. And I said, what do I do now? And he said, well, you can go to these pulley functions and you can train with the Marines and your recruiters, and to help you get you in shape. And I said, okay, I'll go do that. And then I went back and met Staff Sergeant Fisher again, and he said, hey, you did a good job. He goes, I don't know when we're going to get you to boot camp, but we'll figure it out. Now that was September. And he goes, do yourself a favor, make sure you're in shape for boot camp. And I said, okay. And when it came to, I went to like maybe one of these pulley functions, and I just thought it was a joke. There was these kids that were still in high school, and just, I don't want to talk bad about people, but, just people that just weren't ready, so to speak. And I'd always been a pretty athletic person. So I told myself, oh, this pulley stuff's kind of silly. So I'm not going to do that. And my friend of mine worked on a construction crew, and I said, I'm gonna go work for this construction crew until they're ready to send me to boot camp, and I'll move, lumber and pour concrete and do all this stuff, and that'll keep me in shape. And fast forward, it's December now, and I finally got a day off. My cell phone rings, and answer this phone call. It's Staff Sergeant Fisher. He goes, hey, what are you doing? He said, I'm tracking a deer right now. I just shot. He goes, hurry up and find it. You're getting ready. We're shipping you out. And I went, what? He goes, you got 45 minutes to figure out whatever you're going to do and get up to the office, figure it out, and then hung up the phone.
Jesus.
And yeah. And I looked over at my friend Justin, and I said, hey, I'm going to boot camp right now. Here's my tag for the deer, and I'll see you later, kind of thing. And I drove home, took a shower. Dad was at work at the time. I called him, and I said, hey, I'm getting shipped out today. And he kind of threw a big fit. He tried to make me change my mind at the time. And I said, this is what I want to do. This is what I need to do. And then he said, later we were talking about it. He told me, when you told me this is what you needed to do, and I knew no matter what I said, no matter what I did, I wasn't going to change your mind. The only thing I could do is support you. I had to prove myself to myself. And, coming back, like looking back on it, it was my calling, and it's what I needed to do because, my brother was in Desert Storm. My uncle was in Vietnam. My grandpa and his brother were both in World War II. My great grandfather was in World War One. My grandpa's brother, my uncle, he was also in Korea as well. And, it was just like, and everybody was in the Marine Corps. So it was like, this is my generation's war, and I have to fight it, because kind of like a family tradition thing, so to speak. And
quite a rich family military heritage.
Yes. And it was just, like a lot of the major wars that we've had, my family's been in, and it was just, at the time I wasn't even thinking about that. It was just like, I need to do something to get out of Iowa, and this is my fastest ticket. So I get to my recruiting station, put me in a van with a bunch of guys, and ship us off to an airport. Now, mind you, this is the first time I'd ever been past the gate in an airport and even flown on a plane.
Oh, really? First time on a plane?
First time on a plane. Yeah.
Wow.
You'd never guess that. You figured I'd be flying all my life now. You go to the airport with me. But so first time on a plane, and I was just like, where do I go? And I was so lost. And, so this guy that was kind of flying the same, he was getting on the connecting flight. So we had to fly from Des Moines, Iowa, and then we flew to Denver, Colorado. And I was like, I don't know where to go. And so he showed me how to get to my gate, and then he said, well, good luck, I'll see you later. And I was like, I don't know if we'll ever see each other again, but thanks, man. And to this day, I don't even remember that guy's name.
Oh, really?
And
what was it like getting on the plane for the first time? Do you remember what your thoughts were as it was taking off?
Oh, geez. So when I found my seat and I sat down, I was like, oh, this makes sense now, because I thought the rows were like bench seating, like in a car, where it's like this bench, that bench, and
gotcha.
I didn't realize there was like an aisle down the middle kind of thing. And then like I was like super pumped when the plane was getting ready to take off, and then when it did, I was like, oh, this doesn't, like I don't know. I was like, you see jets take off, and you see these planes just like the sonic boom go, and that's what I'm like waiting to feel. And I was like, this is kind of lame. Like I was thinking it was going to be a lot more than what it really was.
Very underwhelming, yeah.
Oh yes, very. I was like, come on, because like you think like how fast like this ginormous plane has to go, to get airborne, and it's not really as fast as people think.
What was it like getting off the bus and putting your foot on the yellow steps?
I remember getting there, and we stood on these footprints, and I'm just like looking off at all this stuff. I've never been in California. I'd never been out of, the Midwest at that time. I'm just trying to like look around at everything, and kind of blew my mind. And then, hey, get eyes front, oh shit. Okay. Yeah. Come back to reality. You got to do what you're being told right now. I never went to those poolie functions that I was told, hey, you should go to these poolie functions to help you get in shape. Well, they also teach you like everything you need to know, like day one of going to the Marine Corps kind of thing. I'm just lost in the sauce right now, just not knowing what the hell is going on.
You missed out on a lot of vital information there.
Oh yeah. Like that's like the biggest thing. Like if somebody Like if you're trying to get into a job and somebody tells you, hey, you should do this, listen to that person, because he's giving you, he's telling you what to do. And, you know, I was young and I didn't care. And I was just like, I'll figure it out. Trust me. If somebody's giving you advice, take it. That's the best advice I can give anybody. I remember it empty your pockets. And I had this paperwork that they said, don't lose, don't give it to anybody. Just hold on to it. So I held on to this paperwork and I was holding on to it. And they said, you know, like, what's in your pocket? And I pulled this paperwork out of my pocket and just rolled up paper, all this, you know, I had like all my information on it and everything. And I held on to it. And this drill instructor, it like came out of like the rafters, like tried to grab it from me. And I pulled it away from him. That was mistake number one. And then there was like 10 people started just like, where did these guys come from? And they start just yelling at me and just doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I am not getting rid of this paper because I was told not to give it to anybody. And then they just rip it out of my hand and throw it across the room. And I was like, well, messed that up.
There goes that.
It wasn't that important.
So there was a bit of a culture shock going into it as well.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, you know, that's one thing that the Marine Corps does. And, you know, I still have friends that are in the Marine Corps, and it seems like times are changing a little bit. But that's the one thing about the Marine Corps that I love is that they take everything away from you. You know, they take your identity away from you, and they build you to what they need you to be. You know, your name is now Recruit, whatever your last name is. Your first name's Recruit, like everybody else in the squad does.
I think the Marines do a really good job in regards to, you know, everyone comes in and making everyone the same. It doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter anything. Everyone is green. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Everyone gets pulled down to that base, and it's really important to do that.
And unless it's the summertime, then we're all tan, you know?
Yep. True.
And, but, you know, and then I remember, you know, graduating boot camp, and like you make all these friends, and you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna take over the world, and then like everybody kind of like goes off to their MOS school, and then you make more friends and you make new friends, and then you kind of forget about those other guys.
Once you left there, you went to your MOS school, which was 0311, because you went in as an Infantry Marine. Can you talk to me about some of the experiences you got there?
So I remember like the first thing we did, we got all our gear, just like anything you do, and you get all your gear and you get issued all this stuff, and you're like, I got to figure out how to get this to fit in this backpack or you know, this rucksack, and it's going to fit because it'll fit. Some people call it the Marine Corps camping trip, and other people call it, you know, Marine Corps Combat Training Battalion, you know, and so everybody does the exact same thing. So the guys that aren't infantrymen, they get, you know, the same kind of training. They kind of tell us, you know, come up with a wish list. What do you want to do? They had like some recon guys come in, and we did a recon screen, and them just telling us about how they work in small teams, and you know, they got a lot more training and did a lot more things, and you know, you're kind of like a Navy SEAL, but you're not like a Navy SEAL, but you do a lot of stuff that they do. So they, you know, I was talking to this guy, and he was telling me, well, you got to be a 0311, you got to be a rifleman if you're gonna try to come over here. And I said, okay, well then that's what I want to do. So you had to come up with a wish list, and what did you want to do? So when it comes to infantry, you have your basic riflemen, you have your machine gunners, you have your mortarmen, and then you have your rocket launcher guys. So me, the only thing I could think of at the time was I want to be a sniper and I want to be recon. And if I can do them both, then that's what I want to do. So I picked the infantry rifleman, and we started going through the infantry rifleman package.
So talk to me about once you've come out of your MOS school, going into the battalion.
It was weird because at that time, you know, the war was already started, and the Marine Corps was losing a lot of people. So me and my friend Jason, we had got like selected to go to recon training battalion. We were all jazzed about that. What had happened was that they just kind of probably picked the, you know, first 35 guys in the list, and both our names started with D, so we were in that list. We got sent to what was called Combat Replacement Company. You guys are getting sent to Combat Replacement Battalion. You guys are getting ready to go. You guys are going to go to Iraq. You're going to go soon. And I was like, oh, okay. This is what we plan to do. So I didn't think it was going to be this quick, but all right.
So can you tell me a little bit when you found out you were going to Iraq, the day came, getting on a plane, ready to fly over. Can you talk me through what your thoughts were, how you were feeling?
Everybody was really quiet. And we flew from Southern California, and oh God, we made so many stops. I'm just kind of, following the lead from my team leaders and, the Marines that I looked up to. Me and Jesse, a great friend of mine, we get picked out of, everybody to go on this recon the city. I looked at Jesse. I said, hey, you know how to drive a Humvee? He goes, yeah. I said, okay, well, you drive and I'll sit in the passenger seat. I didn't know what to bring. I just showed up. We just showed up. So they're like talking about, we're going to go here. We're going to turn down, we're going to go down Baseline. We're going to turn on, Alpha Street. I don't even remember. And they're talking about like, we're going to make a left here. We're going to make a right here. We're going to go this way. Then we're going to go here. And I was just like, oh my God, this is really happening. I look over at Jesse and I say, hey, do you remember the route? And he goes, no, I didn't write it down. I thought you were. I don't have anything to write this down with. Just don't lose the truck in front of you. And so that was the very first time I had ever been shot. Well, I wouldn't say the first time I've been shot at, but the first time I've been shot at that somebody really wanted to kill me.
So first time shot at with accuracy.
Yes. So we're driving around the city, and we kind of stopped to the main street that was in Ramadi. It was Baseline, and we stopped there. And I was like, why are we stopped? And we get on the radio and we're asking them, hey, what's going on? Like, oh, we're checking something really quick. There's something in the road. So we're just sitting there, and you got to think like this is a battalion size patrol
convoy,
a convoy of trucks. So there's probably 40, 50 trucks, they're showing us the city, and they just kind of bottlenecked us and put something in the road, so we stopped. And then I hear over the radio, hey, get one of your guys out and put him in the back of that truck. As soon as I open the door, 3 rounds impact the door. I closed the door and I went, well, it's time to sling lead. And he goes, and Jesse goes, just make sure they don't shoot you in your ass. And so I ran out and I jumped in the back of this truck. I set my gun up. I'm like, hey, I'm hot. I'm ready to go. And I said, if you see anything else, let me know. I didn't have any MEGs at that time. I didn't have night vision, and it's pitch black dark. And I'm just sitting behind this gun thinking, what am I going to do if they start shooting at me? And,
so you're looking for muzzle. You're looking for muzzle flash.
I'm
pretty
looking for
much
anything that moves right now. Jesse's watching out the passenger side window for what was, more of a porthole of anything. And I just remember him say, hey, watch your 12 o'clock. And I said, my 12 o'clock or your 12 o'clock? So I looked to the front of the truck, and then we start taking on rounds. I kind of froze, and I was like, hey, what do I do? He's like, well, shoot back at him. So that was the first time I ever shot at a human being. I remember we get back and we're high-fiving each other and talking about how cool it was. And so we're all jazzed, hey, we just got to do a firefight. This is awesome. And we'll walk up to Sergeant Altosis, and he goes, okay, what'd you learn out there? And I said, everybody wants to shoot at you. He goes, what streets did you drive down? And I said, I have no idea.
The one where the bad guys are at.
Yeah, the one where all the bad guys are. And he goes, come on, Dotson, of all people, you didn't take a book with you or anything? I said, they gave me a map with a bunch of stuff on it, but I don't know what I'm looking at. He just starts shaking his head and he's like, God damn it, Dotson.
So that was your initiation pretty much into country.
That was my initiation into country, day 2 of ever being in country. Jimmy Welter and Jimmy Collins came up to me and they said, "Hey, you're a real man now." I said, "What?" He goes, when lead started getting slung at you, you slung back. He goes, "I got nothing but respect for you." And I tell you, coming from those 2 guys, hearing that was just like, it's like watching the kid being burned. These are 2 guys that I really respected and looked up to. And just hearing it from them, it was, hearing that from them, it was just like, kind of like the feeling you get when you ask your father-in-law for permission to marry your wife, kind of thing. That's the only way I can explain it. It was just amazing.
Can you talk to me a little bit about when you got into country? Did you get the mission explained? Did you have, rules of engagement explained to you, that sort of thing? Did you know what the overall goal was?
Mm-hmm. That's where there's a little bit of confusion for a lot of people. So when we got there, we were looking for Al Qaeda, and we were also trying to help the city between the Sunni and the Shiites war, so to speak. And we were trying to kind of rebuild the city of Ramadi after we had destroyed it. And so Alpha Company's main focus, we had a building that was in the middle of the city that we manned. We would man it for a week, and then we would go on patrols throughout the city for a week, and then, 2 weeks, so to speak. And so we would held down we were protecting the governor of the city of Iraq and his family, and then we were initially just trying to go through and restart jobs and rebuild their government and their democracy. That shit never happened. While we were there, they kidnapped the governor's family, and then they ended up kidnapping and killing, the governor and his family, and then just kind of gave the city back to, the bad guys, so to speak. At that time, the war that I was fighting was, I'm fighting a war for my brothers. The initial mission that we went there for, I don't think it ever got accomplished. We would set up these jobs, like basically like a job fair. Hey, do you want a job? Do you want to work for, do you want to do stuff for your city being employed by the United States government? And it seemed like the whole city would show up, and they'd, let in 40, 50 people, and then they'd start, trying to implement them. And one of the big things that we did while we were there is that we kind of like stood up the Iraqi police force and tried to get them back in and get some more order and law back into that city. And these guys were just as corrupt as, any the worst corrupt people you could think of. I wasn't involved in like the screening in the back, like hand picking these people. I was just, making sure that the building didn't get attacked. But one of the hardest things I ever did in my Marine Corps career, and even now too, is we were on patrol. And we were doing a drop-off of a sniper team. We dropped them off early in the morning, and then they had got like compromised or something, and we were going to pick them up. For some reason, my team got split up that day. I was talking with my friend Chad Maynard, and he said, "Hey, are you driving a truck?" And I said, "Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't really like driving trucks because then you got to stay with the truck. I don't really want to do it." He goes, "Well, we're kind of going to somewhere hot. Want to rock, paper, scissors? I got a gun this other truck." I said, "Sure, let's rock, paper, scissors. That's the most fairest way to do it." We played rock, paper, scissors. I beat him. And so I got thrown in a different truck. Me and Jimmy Collin, we got thrown in truck 4. And then the rest of my team was back in truck 5. We went and picked these guys up, and then we were followed by a car that night. It was that time of night to where there was a curfew. We turned down this road, and I remember I remember Jimmy Collins telling me, hey, go peek your head out and make sure they made that turn. And I peeked my head out, and right when I peeked my head out, that's when I saw the truck blow up. I saw it explode. And I jumped back down inside the truck and said, hey, this is a real big explosion. I called her out over the radio. That's when, to this day, because I had an earpiece and I was able to hear the radio as well. And they were doing, the head check. Truck 1 would go, truck 2 would go, 3, 4, 5. But I remember hearing Chad's voice saying, truck 5, we're up. And then truck 6 and everything. And when you looked at it, it looked like 2 vehicles sitting right next to each other. So we got out, we set a cordon out, and doing our checks and making sure everybody's good. We finally realized, hey, that's truck 5. So I remember, just seeing this truck and seeing people in it. And the first thing I did is I ran out to it to start trying to pull people out of it, kicking dirt, and I grab a fire blanket and I'm trying to hit this fire out with this fire blanket and just trying to do everything that I can to put this fire out. And once we realized what had really happened, once it finally sunk in, it was like one of the worst days of my life, man. And my entire team was in that truck, minus me and Jimmy. And I had to stand there and watch it burn. And there was nothing I could do about it. I remember Sergeant Alcosis came up to me, smacked me on the head, and said, hey, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to put this fire out. He goes, there's nothing you can do about it now. Just stop. Get on your gun and start looking for a spot. So that's what I did. Even at that time, like I couldn't believe what I saw. And I just refused to believe what I saw. That was not a Humvee, and that was not my team. And I said, I heard Chad's voice on the radio. That's not there. And then reality sets in. Sun starts coming up. And you're looking over at it, and you're like, that's my team. That's my team right there. We went out and picked up my team, picked up their body parts, and put them in bags, and did the best thing I could to make sure that Dion Whitley got both his legs and even get one of somebody else's legs, and both of Jesse's arms were with him. And I remember we were up on top of this building, making sure that we had everything, all the pieces of the truck. This guy looked down, his name Vasa. He looks down, picks up the wedding ring, and he says, hey, this is Johnny's wedding ring. Johnny had just proposed, Johnny Flores had just proposed to his girlfriend, Alex, right before he did that. Oh man, second here. So we picked all that stuff up, and we held on to that, and we were actually able to get Johnny's wedding ring back to Alex. We made sure that we were able to any personal items that were on our brothers, made sure that we were able to collect that stuff and get it back to the families. I was talking to the chaplain, and he was probably one of the only chaplains I know of that had a combat action ribbon. He walked up to me, put his arm around me, and he said, I could read you about 50,000 different Bible verses and tell you, this is what you need to feel and this is what you need to do. But I'm gonna talk to you like a man, not like a pastor right now. You need to mourn later. You don't need to do it today. You don't do it when you get home. You need to keep your head right. You need to keep your head straight. If that was you in that bag over there, would you want these guys crying and moping and only thinking about you, or thinking about the mission? And I thought to myself, it was just like, I never thought about it that way. That's when I finally just kind of like became numb to everything else that ever happened while we were over there, you know? And it was just like, I'm not going to have feelings about what I'm having now. I'm going to wait and do it later. And I can kind of do it in more of a controlled environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where a lot of that Marine discipline, I guess, comes in as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, we had our memorial for those guys. We had our memorial when we got back. I think that's when I became just like a very angry person, you know, because I remember we got back and then, you know, it was, we got all our new Marines that had just graduated. I didn't want to like, you know, just like mess with people for no reason. I always wanted to make sure that there was a task and a purpose. And there was always two outcomes when I trained Marines. And there was the outcome of mission successful, and there was an outcome of not. You know, it either went, you know, it went the way that it needed to, and nothing ever went, you know, the way you wanted it to go. But if it was a successful, you know, training event, then, you know, it was you know, a successful night. But if it wasn't, then, you know, we're always big sticklers on pain retains kind of thing. And if it didn't work the way it needed, if the outcome of the mission didn't happen, then it was going to be a painful night, so to speak. And like I wasn't like beating people up or anything like that, but you know, we would do it until everybody did it right. And I was always the guy that they would say, hey, you know, Dotson, we need to find something for these people to do. And at that time, when my knees were still good, I always loved to run. And I would just, you know, we got nothing to do, let's go for a run. Just, you know, running is the best kind of, you know, physical training anybody can do. And that was what was stuck in my mind. And I would just run until people cried. and I don't like, at the time, you know, I was just things that I thought I was doing, you know, the right thing. And I was, you know, implementing discipline and implementing, you know, just the way that the Marine Corps wanted to be at that time. And
at this stage, how long had you been in for?
This is my first 4 years in the Marine Corps. So I was coming up on my fourth year in the Marine Corps. I had, you know, just gotten married to Maria, my wife, the love of my life. And, you know, I told her, I said, hey, I'm thinking about getting out of the Marine Corps, but I have no idea what I want to do. And she said, well, why don't you stay in the Marine Corps and figure it out? And I said, you know what? It's a great idea. So I then got moved to 5th Marine Regiment.
So you would have been corporal at this stage?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. I was a corporal at the time. I got moved to 5th Marine Regiment because at this time I was in desperate need of knee surgery. So then I got moved into what was called Camp Guard. And basically, you know, it's like it's a bunch of guys that are like getting out of the Marine Corps. At this time, I had already signed like pre-enlistment paperwork. And I'm like, what am I doing here at Camp Guard? So they make me a sergeant of the guard. I'm a corporal right now. And then I have like left side, and then a really good friend of mine, James Cardenas, he had, you know, like right side, so to speak. So we would, and they moved me there so I could have like a slower paced training, like a no training schedule, so to speak. And basically, you're sitting at the motor pool, or sitting over here, sitting where there's you know, like expensive gear so it doesn't get stolen. You know, because, you know, who's going to steal it but a bunch of Marines? But, you know, we're going to stand here and keep people out of it. And but they put me over there so I could, you know, finish my physical therapy and then possibly get knee surgery. So I was there for a while. So I went to combat marksmanship training. And so I became a marksmanship coach. That was really fun because one thing I do, I love to teach. And if I'm really good at it, if I know how to do something and someone wants to learn how to do it, I will teach them until they're as good as me or better, kind of thing. And that's one thing that I've always tried to do with anybody that I was in charge with. I talked to the regimental sergeant major, and he said, "Hey, we need sergeants to go to 2-5. They're getting slated to go to Afghanistan. You want to go?" And I said, "Hell yeah, sign me up." And he goes, "All right, you got orders tomorrow." And luckily, they were right down the street from where I had normally been going to, check in. So it was all in the same camp, so it's just, like down in Robo, instead of, making a left at the gate, you make a right, basically. They said, "Hey, we're getting ready to go to Afghanistan, but we're also doing a boat package." And I thought to myself, well, hell, I've done plenty of these before. We're going down to Coronado. And they're like, yep, no. You got all your gear? I said, I got enough of it. And just, okay, well, tomorrow we're leaving to Coronado, and we expect you down there by 8:00. Yeah, I'll be there. And we can get down there. And so at this time, I'm a sergeant in the Marine Corps, so I still have to kind of prove myself. It's different this time because I'm not trying to prove myself to everybody. You prove your self-worth to that company and that platoon and why you're there and why you're in that position. And, luckily with my experience and my training that I had prior to that, it didn't take long for them to realize, hey, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about. So we get ready. We end up not getting slated to go to Afghanistan and get sent back to Okinawa. So same kind of thing. Go back to Okinawa. We kind of did a lot of the same training. It had been, a few years since I had been there, and I kind of knew the ropes. But the platoon that I was in was actually really cool. They're called trailer platoon. Like bigger picture, because at that time, like the only thing I could think about was what the Marine Corps needed, not what other people needed, not what other people wanted, but what the Marine Corps needed.
Yeah, but at the same time, you had a very supportive wife as well.
Yes, I did. Maria's she's a rock star, and the way that she kind of just was able to take care of everything. My hat is off to her, and other like military wives, around the world, just like the way that she was able to just take care of everything while I was gone. She was able to make sure that all the bills were paid, and she was able to make sure that our daughter got to school on time, and she was able, it's kind of weird, if you get back from a deployment after being gone for so long, you used to do something this way, or you used to put your coffee cup over here, and then, you've been gone for 6 to 8 months, and now, coffee cups go over here. And it's just, you kind of have to.
I suppose it's proving yourself and learning how to fit in a whole new environment again.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just, it's kind of fun and it's kind of weird at the same time, because you kind of fall back in love with that woman that you fell in love with. You have your computer with your webcam, and that was the way that you had conversations for free. If you weren't using like a payphone or something like that. And but even having like conversations, as often as you can, you try to think that things won't be different, but they always were. It was just, you weren't there, so you don't know like how things change. And the way that she was just able to just hold down the fort, it was just amazing. I still to this day, if the shoes were on
the last thing I want to touch on is a little bit of resilience. You've been through and seen a lot of stuff. How do you keep yourself in check? What's some of the tips that you can give?
One of the biggest tips, and People laugh at me when I tell them that. And I woke up one day and I decided I wanted to live a drama-free life. And that in this day and age, it's nearly impossible. And one of the biggest things that I do is when I start hearing other people's business, or like even, you're at work and, hey, you'll never guess what Johnny did the other day. And if it doesn't deal with me, doesn't deal with my family, and it doesn't deal with my job, I don't care. And unless it affects my livelihood, my life, or my job, I don't care what other people do. Granted, that's a little bit different once I put my cop costume on, as I call it. But when it comes to my day-to-day life, I try to, believe it or not, I try to stay off, social media, and that works a lot for me too. And just kind of a sober living as well. A lot of people, try to drink away their problems and kind of, it's because it's fun. I'm not going to lie to anybody about that. It's fun. It's fun to, it's fun to party. But, I just kind of decided one day it was just something that I didn't really want to do anymore. And everybody fights their demons differently. And the best thing that I have found about that is to literally talk about them. I mean, that story about my team, it took me 15 years to tell anybody about that wasn't there. And it's just, for me, that's what helped. And, I don't, you don't want those guys to be forgotten. You want their stories and their lives, and those guys were heroes, and people need to know about that kind of stuff. And, for me, that's what helped me. And, reach out to your team, reach out to your platoon, reach out, a lot of people don't want to talk to people that have never been there. I've been there, and, if somebody listening here wants to talk to me, we'll figure out, we'll get linked up and we can talk, we can swap war stories and all kinds of anything you want. I'm a great talker. I love to talk, as you can tell, but I have a really good ear and I love to listen as well. And that's one of the biggest things that I, that helped me out the most.
One last thing that I've been kind of planning since I've heard your story about your team in Iraq.
Okay.
I want to give you the opportunity, if you'd like, to repeat their names and their ranks, so everyone in this podcast can hear their name and their story can live on. Absolutely. So when we start, I don't know if it's the bottom or the top, but you have Lance Corporal Chad Maynard, KIA, June 15th, 2005. Dion Whitley, Lance Corporal Dion Whitley, KIA, June 15th, 2005. Jesse Jaime, KIA, June 15th, 2005. John Flores, KIA, June 15th, 2005. Corporal Jonathan Trevelyan. He wasn't a part of my team, but he was in that truck. KIA, June 15th, 2005. Awesome, dude. Thank you for sharing that. And we got to make sure the memories of these guys, they did pay the ultimate sacrifice, mate. So, very, very honored that you shared that story with us.
Oh, absolutely.
And we can help the memories of these guys live on.
Thank you.
No, man. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you coming on today and chatting. This is going to have to be
we're able to link up and do this.
Yeah, man. Well, you stay well,
Oh, you as well.
keep in touch, and we'll speak soon.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful day. I'm gonna go take a nap.
Yeah, you had a long night, mate.
I did. But it's all good.
All right.
Yeah, I was able to watch the sunrise with you, and it was beautiful.
Beautiful, mate, and very fitting for that memorial as well at the sunrise.
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome, Dave.
Well, you have a wonderful man, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you for tuning into the Priority Zero podcast. We greatly appreciate your dedicated listenership. If you are interested in being featured as a guest on our show, we welcome you to reach out to us through our official channels on Facebook or Instagram. Alternatively, you can contact us via email at contact@priorityzero.com.au. We value your support in helping us spread these compelling stories to a wider audience. Kindly consider liking and sharing these episodes, as it plays a crucial role in our mission to reach as many people as possible.